You're listening to Tom's Engaging HR podcast, where we're amplifying, humanizing, and engaging leaders who are making work better for employees every day. Thanks for joining us for a fun and engaging conversation. Let's go.
We are back for episode 5 of Tom's Engaging HR. Super excited about today's episode. It's a conversation that I've seen out there in the workplace a lot. It's somebody new to my network, someone awesome that I absolutely love talking with. So let's get to it. RyanMae is our guest. She considers herself a non-traditional people person. She's worked in the people space from startups to ski areas. She is well-versed in multifunctional operations for lean people teams. She uses humor to lighten most moods and remind folks she's not regular HR, she's cool HR. Her strategic focus includes work-life balance, healthy culture for everyone's mental well-being, creating a company people actually want to work for. When not being a people person, she lives her best old lady life, knitting, reading, wine tasting, hanging with her husband and cats in the Bay Area. Ryan, welcome to Tom's Engaging HR.
Yes, so excited.
Yeah, this is awesome. I just got back from a ski weekend myself up in Aspen. I'm not that bougie. It's the annual trip I go with the crew, but I'm feeling real good about ski season right now.
I love that. I mean, we're about 4 hours away from Tahoe, and I have been seeing them get dumped on. And I'm mostly retired from the winter sports. I'm more of a lodge lounger now, but I enjoy seeing it, and I know that excitement of like, oh, a powder day is like nothing else. And on the flip side, I know you and I were joking last time we were talking about scary stuff, and every time I see like an avalanche or road closure, I'm like, and this is why I don't do that HR anymore, because there's so many agencies and so much paperwork.
Yep.
I enjoy it from afar.
Well, I've got a new one for you. This morning, I saw a 40-foot cravat opened at Tahoe at the ski resort. That is nightmare fuel right there.
I was joking with a colleague of mine, and there was an avalanche, same thing, and I was like, hope everyone's okay. Also, no thank you, Forest Service. No thank you, OSHA. No thank you, workers' comp. No, like, I kudos to the seasonal worker warriors of HR, because y'all learn it hard, you learn it fast, and there's no day is the same.
Yeah, 100%. So you worked at ski. I read that in your bio. I don't recall that from initial.
That's actually where I started. I graduated and was like, I'm just gonna kind of be a ski bum for a couple years and then go get a big girl job. And ski areas do hiring fair preseason, and that's where you're gonna work in a restaurant, you're gonna be a lifty, you're gonna work in ski school, whatever. And goodness gracious for the person who pulled me out. He's like, so you have like a degree and like you seem over. I was like, I'm just gonna work in the restaurant. I don't care. And so they tossed me in HR as just a seasonal to support kind of the visa process, because a lot of ski areas bring people in from other countries.
Yep.
And I loved it. I didn't really fully say I knew what HR was at that point. I think I was like 22 and not a full adult yet. But really learned a lot, like all the agencies, all the compliance, running orientation. There's a lot of elements to ski areas with like, you have housing for people because there are visas, you do transportation. So a lot of things you don't see in day-to-day HR. Kind of got my feet wet. Did that for a couple years before I bounced to the Bay Area. And better for it. Definitely can't keep that pace, because, you know, when you're in your 20s and you work at a ski area, there's also the social activities, which are very draining, because you ski, you work, you party. Again, kudos to those folks. I am not that girl anymore, because I need to be in bed by 9. I'm very big on the steady sleep pattern. But it was a blast. And I do think it was very much how I got into operations, because you're dealing with, you have visas, but you have 2 different types of visas. And then you have OSHA compliance, and you have drug testing and workers' comp, because people are constantly, you're falling, people are running into you. So it was really just kind of a great trial by fire of like the ops world of HR.
You know, that's one of the things I was thinking about. There's a lot of people from Argentina at Icon, which is the pass I have here in Colorado. And is that, where were you bringing people in from? I know that's a whole different wrinkle of staffing, bringing in seasonal international employees.
Shout out to the J1 visa. So my first year was Peru, and I want to say second year was Honduras. It has been admittedly a minute. Don't want to say how close to 20 years, but closer than I'm comfortable with. But definitely I know it was Honduras, Peru. I think one year they did Argentina or Brazil, and I don't know in the current climate what that looks like. I'm sure it's changed and probably gotten more complicated than it used to be. But there's something really rewarding about going to the Reno Tahoe airport and there's 50 people that are going to work for you for 4 months and you're going to be like, welcome to the party, guys. Like, let's get it going. Also, we still have to work. Yeah. So it's cool. I'm glad to see they still do that. I know those programs lead to a lot of educational relationships because a lot of people in the American side, especially when your winter's the opposite of ours, if you're a true ski bum, you'll flip and go down south. And it's just a nice exchange to see another culture. Honestly, some of the nicest coworkers you'll ever have.
Yeah, the Argentina folks have been so nice and such great service. And I don't know, it just struck me as they probably show up for work a little more consistently than the American workers that are also, they're just trying to rip a lot. You know, when I talk to a lot of the lifties, they're like, woo! And I talk to Argentina folks, like, I'm here working.
Yeah, I have definitely made the joke that I am less comfortable in my now, I just turned 40s, knowing what goes on with lift operators. So I'm always like, just kind of less is more knowledge on that. Because 20-year-old me was like, yeah, totally safety 20,000 ton machine. Let's go. And now I'm like, are you certified? Have you taken a course?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like the right ear protection for this operation. So it's definitely, but I think there is a gratitude when you come on a visa, both here or if you travel abroad. I know several people who've done a year abroad, a couple of people who've done semester at sea. When your livelihood depends on like, hey, you have to show up, you're going to probably show up a little bit more clear, a little bit more ready, a little bit more dedicated.
Yeah.
And it honestly, I think it rubs off on other people too. We're all naturally competitive as humans.
Right.
So if you see somebody like bringing their A game every day, which maybe in the design of things is way back when whoever the grandfather of Vail was like, yeah, we should bring in people to like motivate each other.
Yeah, that pencils. Listen, I could talk skiing all day. We got a lot to get through. Because I just found out as we jumped on, you just got back from Transform, right?
I did. Shout out to HR Transform. I still have a little bit of gravel in my throat. I will blame that on the closeout party with Flo Rida and special guest Flavor Flav showed up.
Wow, nice.
So I just want to say shout out to whoever plans those because they're very clearly like the elder millennials have taken over. The closing show in the last couple of years has been like, this is our demographic and they are nailing it.
I would have liked to have seen Flavor Flav on like an HR panel talking about
Same. And apparently though, he's like in his mid 60s. I was like, I'm going to need him to drop the skincare routine because he looks great. Like I was shocked.
Yeah?
I was like, he's had a rough come up and I was like, that guy's in his 60s. Like, so shout out to Flavor Flav for holding it down.
Way to go, Flavor Flav. So, you know, what were some of the takeaways? I didn't get to go. I love going to conferences, but I'm in more of a regional role, and ADP where I'm at is, you know, huge. We got people for that. So I didn't get to go, but, you know, what were your takeaways? What resonated?
Two big things from Transform. There's like that I call HR summer camp element. You run into all your friends. You see people you're in online communities with. I texted our mutual acquaintance Sims and was like, why are you not here, buddy? So there's a really social element, which I think with most people teams are pretty small. So you get kind of that camaraderie you may not get in your day-to-day. This year with Transform, it felt a little bit controversial. There was some stuff that super resonated. Lots of talk of AI, lots of talk of pay transparency. There was some other stuff that I feel like maybe we could have fleshed out a little more. There was a panel, they brought in Brittany Peach, who, if anyone's familiar with the socials, she recorded her layoff. It was not handled great.
Yeah.
She attended other conferences and other talks. And I think it was the CEO of Priceline was like, you can work from home, but you can't have a career from home. And like Brittany called it out and I agree with her. I was like, okay, so you have an outsider that's like, hey, this doesn't make sense, who's got a huge platform right now due to being kind of TikTok famous. And there was a couple panels where comments were made where I was like, okay, I think we need to like reapproach this. It was very kind of like, oh, return to office is the future. And I would say that's probably 20% true for certain fields.
Right.
And then there was a kind of a controversial, they were talking about employee unhappiness. There is a woman, Melissa Doman, she wrote a book about mental health in the workplace. And she was giving some insights. The CPO of Tengenomics was on the panel. I can't remember who the other person was. And the consensus is like, happiness is a two-way street.
Yeah.
And like, you can't be responsible for my entire happiness. I, as the company, can't be 100% responsible. And there was some kind of feedback and rumblings like, well, we just need to fix it. It's like, yes, but that's what we're here for. There wasn't like kind of the meat of the discussion.
They introduced the idea, but didn't get down into the weeds of it.
And I think that you have 3 days. It's hard to, you're not going to solve everything in 3 days. Um, it's interesting to see kind of, I don't want to say the division, the difference of opinions with things like work from home, trade pay transparency, employee happiness, who owns what piece of that. Um, so I loved that part of it. I also left like, okay, we still have a lot of work to do, but that's okay. That's why we do things like your podcast and we talk on LinkedIn and just an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, it's constantly evolving. It's I know that TikTok went so big. I was watching last week tonight with John Oliver, and he brought that up, quitting on it. And TikTok, it's just, there's all this new technology, AI and TikTok and work from home and remote and Slack, and HR's got a lot to deal with, and you're constantly, right as you get your feet planted on something new comes your way.
Yeah. And I think like one of the big takeaways from like the Brittany Peach situation is, okay, do we need to always go in? Like, are we being recorded? And are we always going to have our best days? No. Are we going to slip up? Yes. Something that my HR mentor taught me way back when was you end the day with yourself. So can you finish the day and say, hey, I could have been better on that. Okay. Maybe I dropped an F-bomb on all hands. That's not my greatest moment. But do you really want to finish the day and just be like, I completely torched that. I made that person feel awful. I didn't handle that well. And I think that's a really good kind of just status quo to keep. I'll be the first to be like, I'm having a terrible day. Yesterday was a great example. I was like, I have no voice from Vegas. I didn't sleep good. I have 7,000 emails I got to get through.
Yep.
If I'm short, it's definitely me. It's not you. I'm just going to put it into the universe right now. But I think being able to have that conversation and transparency is how you avoid situations like that.
Yeah.
Because God, my fear is to be recorded on a termination or a layoff or something. But I would hope on the flip side, if it was to happen, it'd be like, okay, they're in an unfair situation too. And I think the big thing from the Brittany Peach takeaway is we don't decide who gets fired. We don't decide who gets laid off. We don't decide these things. We're there as support. And I think that that's really where HR has an opportunity to speak out more and be like, hey, like, whether we agree, disagree, don't agree, we're going to support you post transition the best way we can. And something that we have from Blackthorn is I'm still in touch with a ton of former employees, like just a, hey, how are you doing? I've gotten a couple notes like, oh, I miss the culture there, like things like that, which feels really good because I'm in the human business. And just because like, hey, you don't work here today. Well, you might have a question about Pober. You might have a question about your W-2. You might want to just say hi, or what was that fun game we played? And I think really trying to establish a relationship with a human is what really can make those differences in those hard conversations.
Yeah, it's when I worked at People Element, we did a lot of exit surveys. A lot of people wouldn't do exits for people that were terminated. But the companies that did found that most of those people liked a lot of the job, liked a lot of the company. There was something that wasn't a fit or something that didn't work or an incident. But that doesn't mean there's not another whole person behind that incident or that piece that didn't work. And when your culture can flow all the way through that exit process, you really have a good culture that's focused on that person as a person. And like you, I've got a lot of friends.
Learn from it.
I have friends that I fired. I just had a buddy on Facebook. The first guy I ever fired in my career, I'm still in touch with from, I think it's like 2001, and he's still poking fun at me on Facebook last week about it. So, there's a right way to do it.
There's a right way to do it, and we're not always going to get it right. There's not a handbook on this. And I think but having the power to say like, hey, that wasn't handled right. And hey, we could have done better. There's always a chance to grow. Exit surveys. If somebody is like, I hated all of this, okay, well, that's my job to go and say, hey, what can we learn from this? Is it somebody who's just mad? Is it something that is fixable? Is it something that's not fixable? And I think that's where communication and transparency are huge tools that are underutilized.
I love it. And this is a perfect lead-in to our main topic of the day, the 4-day work week. When you showed up on my radar with the 4-day work week, I went, yes, this is something people talk about. I haven't talked to anybody about it. And I think a lot of what we're touching on now is going to flow through into this topic.
100%. It's a game changer. I would love to take credit for it. I cannot. Our COO, who is my direct boss, approached me early 2023 and was like, hey, I'm seeing this study out of the UK. I'll admit, most ignorant moment. I was like, cool, that's great in the UK. We're in America, like 5 days. And he's like, well, we have people in the UK. And I was like, you got me. And that's the one thing I respect about my boss is he has no problem being like, I'm going to need you to think outside that box and get back to me.
It's a great boss.
Yeah, he's amazing. So we did some research on it. There was not a lot. There's still not a lot, and there's a lot of naysayers. We ran a beta. We identified problems kind of straight out the gate in the beta. How do you handle holidays? How do you handle holidays when you have 13 countries? How do you handle sales? Like if it's end of month, end of quarter, you know people are going to be pushing, and you don't want to steal that time. I'm a big I read a concept about time theft being wage theft, and so I've always kind of integrated that. So we did a beta for 3 months. We also did an employee survey. We're very big on engagement, and it was the number one listed like perk. And I was like, okay, so we're gonna have to make it work
Wow.
now because I'm not rolling out the just kidding, guys. We're taking it away. And so we have, and I think what really the pivotal lesson we took away from it is you have to have leadership buy-in. It has to be your whole team. It can't be, well, everybody but one. And then
Right.
looking at the logistical side of it, we have an app. It's not a 4-day app. It's a 24/7 app. What does support look like? Who can people contact? So once we kind of fleshed all of that out, it was really just establishing the expectation. And the number one question about 4-day work week is it 4 10s? Is it 4 9s? Did you guys take a pay cut? Like everybody assumes there's like a fractional piece to this. And originally we didn't have that.
And that's where I want to start. Like, I think about a lot of people are listening are going, oh my gosh, wow, wait, oh, there's a lot here. And you just kind of laid that out. But I want to not, what was there, a Brittany Peach?
Yeah.
I don't want a Brittany Peach panel this. I want to make sure we're getting into the weeds on all
We're
this
getting
good
into
stuff.
it.
So let's start at the beginning. Like, what does it mean to have a 4-day work week at your organization?
So the 4-day work week is there's 4 days on Slacks, meetings, reach outs, engagements. If you're supporting customers, you're on those days. We now, some legal advice, have said it's an approximate 9-hour day. But also when we rolled it out, it's 100% work at a 4-day schedule.
Yeah.
So I never want to box in the 4-day work week because everybody uses it different. Some people, they do everything in 4 days. They are offline. They're on the ski slopes. They're rock climbing. They're with their kids. They're offline. Other people, admittedly myself, I appreciate the downtime of Fridays. I do a lot of data analytics if I'm working on sensitive stuff that I just need to kind of focus. But on the flip side, if my boss calls me at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday and is like, where are you? I'm like, I'm at Target. He doesn't care because he knows that time's coming from somewhere. And it's not even so much about the time. It's about getting your objectives done, really just having a lot of onus and autonomy. But for me, I think 4-day work week is really what you make it as the team member.
Yeah.
There are people who probably do a full day on Friday, but love the like quiet of Slacks and emails. We have
it's not just beep, beep, beep all day. You can do a project on your own.
Exactly.
At your pace.
Yes. Just kind of like break things down. If you're roadblocked on something, maybe you can just focus. But on the flip side, we do have teams that pivot. Our support team mainly, they work in a pod schedule. So they do a 2-day weekend and a 4-day weekend because the A pod will work Monday through Thursday 1 week and the B pod will be Tuesday through Friday. And then the next week it flips. But they love it because like you have the 2-day weekend, which we're all used to, but then you have a 4-day weekend every other weekend.
Yeah, that's great.
So, and people are just finding ways to adapt it to their lives. And I think really the big thing with 4-day work week is we had a little bit of a slump late summer last year where it was like some stuff was starting to slip and our leadership came out and said, hey, we're not taking the 4-day work week away. We're asking everyone to find an extra 4 hours somewhere in your ether to just kind of get us over the finish line. And then if we can't get there and we're still slipping, the 4-day work week could be brought into consideration. Nobody wanted that. So everybody kind of just tightened it up and got it good. It's also a really good way to show how time management works.
Yeah.
Are you able to get your deliverables done? If not, how can we assist you? What tools do you need? Could it be that you just don't fit our culture? That's okay. We're going to support and transition however we can, but it actually like kind of brings people's strengths to the strengths and lacking very, very quickly because it is less time in the work week.
Yeah, it seems like that perfect intersection of outputs and culture. Getting things done for the business, getting things done for yourself, getting things done towards goals while maintaining a culture.
And I think it feeds into our bigger culture. My boss is someone I was unsure of at first. We have very different personalities. Mm-hmm. He comes from more of a revenue side. So we had to learn to work really well together. And the way I kind of explain it to people, I'm like, what does the 4-day work week look like? If my boss gives me A, B, and C tasks, he's sat there and needled on, okay, this is going to be coming to me Tuesday. That might be next week. Well, he's given it to me now. I own it. And I've kind of worked with this phrase of being a corporate entrepreneur. I own this piece of the puzzle. It's
Yeah.
my business. How am I going to run it? I now own like having to go to him and say, hey, A is taking 10x longer because I'm blocked by this person, by this technology. Maybe there was an emergency and that got pushed. And I have to come to him and say, hey, we're pushing this, we're changing this, get your direction on what can be maybe delegated to someone else. If I don't do that and I sit there until the middle of next week and he's like, where's everything? I'm like, oh, I didn't get any of it done because of the reasons I just outlined. The tone on that changes. If I come to you on the front end and say, I'm stuck, I'm roadblocked, I need help, I have a question. Okay, great. Let's work on it together. If I come back after everything's past due and stuff, the tone's a little more like, oh, well, I didn't manage my portfolio and my company and my piece of being this mini entrepreneur very well. Sorry. It brings it. And we really do emphasize like, you are empowered to speak up. You're empowered to ask questions. I had a leader once tell me, I'll tell you no, but I will always give you the time to discuss why you think I'm wrong, what your options were, things like that. And even as I've grown and had people reporting to me, I'll tell my people no, and it will never be because I said so.
Wow. Yeah.
I will tell people no because it's illegal, because we don't have the budget, things like that. I will also give them a chance to be like, well, here's another solution. And either it's still going to be a no, it's going to be a yes, or maybe there's a third option that we come up with together. And I think that we really but knowingly from that direction from a former leader really operate like that on Blackthorn. I think we're all very empowered to come up and be like, hey, I don't like the way this is happening. How do we change it? We do ask that you're respectful about it. Like you can't just plow in and be like, everything sucks and you guys are dumb. Like that's still not allowed.
Good. So it sounds like if you found, and it sounds like you're saying this, but like the added, I'll say pressure of a 4-day work week, but you have to earn it. You have to get there. Have you found that helps most employees? Probably not all, everyone's individual, but it sounds like that's enhancing the internal communication. It's enhancing those business skills that everyone needs to have, communicating with their bosses, setting boundaries, getting things done, setting goals, achieving goals. It sounds like all of that lifts a little bit because of the desire to protect that phenomenal benefit of a 4-day work week. Have you found that more people have lifted 100%. Because of it?
I think I would say we probably have 95% lift, and wow. It's the other 5% is not people that even in a 5-day work week. I mean, unfortunately, sometimes people just can't meet the metrics. I actually was thinking this the other day. Our engineering team does a daily update in the engineering Slack channel. And I'm like, I remember when I had no idea what was going on in engineering. I can't say like, obviously they're not going to let me get in there and code because that would be a fast way to destroy everything we've built. But it's nice to be like, oh, we've got this many things going. Where are we at in the sprint? Like just having and the organization. And it's really come from like internal promotions, promoting people up who've showed those time management skills. And on the flip side, there's less kind of interruption during those work days. If I'm going to the DMV, I'm trying to do Friday. If I'm going short of like your kids play, obviously we don't expect parents to be like, so you can only book these on Fridays.
Right.
Those are only Friday situations. People get sick, things like that. But there's less of those kind of like midday interruptions. And even if there is, I use myself as the example, my dentist works Tuesday through Thursday, which kudos to him, the 3-day work week, maybe one day.
Yeah.
But I'm on the West Coast. We're dispersed. We have less of a West Coast presence. So I'm always like, give me the last appointment of the day. If I'm popping off at 4 Pacific, maybe 3 or 4 people will need me, but I'll put in Slack like, hey, like I'm at the dentist, text me if you need me, I'll get back to you. We also have a lot of people who put during the day, my therapist, I'll put therapy on the calendar. I did a big LinkedIn post about that. That was like, this was really scary for me. 1, because people were like, oh, you go to therapy. 2, is my leader going to look at me and be like, why are you doing therapy in the middle of the day on a Wednesday? But he doesn't, because again, I hit my metrics. I run my business. I ask for questions if I need help. I'll look for directions. And a lot of the times our communication, he is all about brevity. And I actually read the book Smart Brevity twice just to like work on my communications with him. I'll send him something, be like, no action needed. Here's the 1-sentence blurb. He knows about it. It's good. We're moving on. It's efficient. It's quick. And I respect that about all of our teams. And then the flip side is we're very clear when you come on. I onboarded a new hire yesterday. Our social Slack is popping all weekend. I'm hiking. This is my cat. I'm painting. I'm doing all this cool stuff. We tell people, hey, if that's overwhelming for you, leave the channels, mute the Slacks. If there's a true life or death emergency, we will go old school, biggest fear to all of us millennials, pick up the phone and call you. Yeah. That's the only time you really got to be like, oh, it's not good. Like I'm getting a phone call. Other than that, nothing is life or death.
I feel like the world is pushing us to have to evaluate things like this. Like in the fall, my son's soccer practice was at 3:30. I was like, 3:30? It's like, there's 20 parents here that all have jobs. Like, how are we getting our kids there at 3:30? And luckily, we didn't have 4-day work week, but we had the organization that said, get your work done, do your business, and go to your kid's soccer practice. Like, we're not like, the world is getting more and more, this is when appointments are. It's the middle of the day. This business isn't operating at these hours. Soccer games are earlier. We had a game at 3:00 for lacrosse in the fall. I was like, what is going on? It's not like we're making this up because we want it. I feel like the world's kind of set up to where we need to almost react to that for our workers, for our employees, and find a system that gets the work done.
Well, and something that I've kind of like been developing in my own kind of space, I remember my leader again, Stuart, man, a few words, the words he says are very impactful. He was like, the job isn't you. Like, I'm not just RyanMae of Blackthorn. And I've kind of developed my own kind of analogy on this where you're a brick wall. We all have bricks on our wall. You're Tom from ADP. You're Tom the podcast host. You're Tom the dad. You're Tom the husband. You're Tom the skier. These are all bricks in your wall.
Yeah.
Maybe some are bigger than others at points in time, but no one piece of that should be so big that if that brick is pulled out, the Jenga wall falls. Like, that just shouldn't be it.
I love it.
And so I kind of operate under a concept of like, we're all whole ass humans. And it's hard sometimes to hold that boundary, but on the flip side, when people are like, oh, you're so mean and HR's this and HR's that, I used to take that really, really personally, like cry, like I would talk to my therapist. I'd be like, I'm the worst. And now it still stings. I'm not immune to feelings,
Right.
But I can take a step back and be like, but I'm still a wife. I'm still an aunt. I'm still cheesy cat mom. Like, I have people who love me. I'm a member of my community. I volunteer. Like, I have all these other pieces to me. And maybe today that's enough. And maybe like RyanMae, the HR person, is on point today. And I forgot to unload the dishwasher. So RyanMae, the wife's not on point today. Like, it's going to be a balance, but I never want anyone who works at our organization to feel like this has to be the biggest piece of your life. I want you to be a cat mom. I want you to be a traveler. I want you to go fill your cup. And I believe like if you can have that frame of thinking as an employer, your team resonates with it. If you appreciate the whole side of it, like you're going to the give and take is so much better. I love people that like you and I were talking about. I was like, I have a potty mouth. I'm working on it. You were like, no problem. Again, shout out to Sims. We were like, how do we like make his episode work? But
he blazed
I
it.
appreciate people. I know. I love that man so much. But like having people that are not like, oh my gosh, no, like you need to be completely proper and on point all the time. Okay, that's cool. That's not who I fully am. I have my moments. And if you can't take all of that, that's okay. But for me, it's just an element of who I am. Yes. Do I need to work on it around my nieces and nephews? Probably. The swear jar is getting expensive.
Oh, they'll call you on
it's just, oh my God, kids, man, they're
They
the
live
ultimate.
for
Like,
it.
I know. I am not being a parent. First of all, so much respect to working parents because I just visited my nephews for a week and I came home and I took like a 4-hour nap. And my sister's like, that fully tracks for being with my kids for a week. And I was like, you just do this like all the time. And you work. But like, that's the thing is like being a whole ass human. And my boss, again, if my sister needs me, if I'm like, hey, I'm in Texas this week, he's like, cool.
I got to call out whole ass human. I hear whole person, whole ass human. Thumbs up on that.
You're a whole ass human. And like and the thing is, we're all different. And that's, I think, like things like Transform are really important because I want to look my vendors in the eye and be like, do not mess with my people. Like, I care about them. I will fight for our rights. I will fight for good benefits. I will fight for these things. And if you can't do it, I'm going to find someone who can. That holds a little more impact when you're at a 10,000 person conference. On the flip side, we see these online networking communities. We see like the local networking communities. HR people have to call other HR people because we give the best advice. We are never taking our own advice. We need someone else to be like, what would you say to you? Yep. Okay, there you go. And it's just a part of being the whole human. Like I'm not going to hit 100% of my metrics of every piece of being a human today. Am I going to get my best? Yeah.
That's
something I'm going to try again tomorrow.
Laura Mazzullo and I talked about in our second episode, but got a little uncomfortable because a lot of it was like, hey, HR folks, you're not drinking the Kool-Aid. You're not acting the Kool-Aid. You're demanding of other people all the time. And it wasn't a attack, but it's just one of those awareness pieces that's so important to make sure doing the work that you're doing, that people are doing out there, that, you have that awareness too, and that you're open to it.
And I think you have to have that self-care because we're great at giving. I'll tell you 20 million great things, Tom. Am I going to listen to them myself? Probably not.
I mean, that's part of the reason I do this is I'm in business development. There's a lot of down points where I feel like I'm not doing a good job. I'm not doing my job. I'm not getting things there. I'm not getting conversations. It's, there's these ebbs and flows, and I put a lot of work into not having that get me down. My entire person isn't Tom, the HR tech sales guy. He isn't the guy that's not my whole worth. It's my job. It's a very important brick in my wall, but it's not the whole wall. And doing this allows me to feel good about myself all the time, so that when that work brick falls out, I've still got this. I'm still doing something meaningful. I feel like I'm still contributing. I'm still progressing as a person and doing something that inspires me. So there's a lot of ways to do that.
And that's the thing. I think you have to find your foundation, and it goes back to the workplace happiness thing. Blackthorn makes me happy. There are days where I am like, I need a nap and a cry, and I'm coming back tomorrow, but today's not my day. But again, it can't define me. And I can't expect Blackthorn to fulfill all of my needs. That's not a fair transactional relationship.
Yes.
And I think having that support is really, like, if you look at the stories, like some of the key voices right now we're seeing. Again, Sims, that guy's story is incredible.
Yes.
And he's a whole ass human. He has this past, he has this crazy musical talent. He's a hustler, he's a father, he's an advocate. Okay, the work thing, it's a big piece of it. It's not all of it. He still knows who he is. And I think that's the one thing I say is the positive from the pandemic is you had to sit at home and you had to figure out who the hell you were.
Yes.
Because there was no other choice.
Yep.
You had to figure out, like, do you love your spouse? Has this fizzled out and now you're home? So you're like, oh, are you reigniting your love with your spouse? I got married during COVID, which was a great lesson in humility and just kind of going with the flow. And
I got divorced during COVID.
Calling your job. See, and I celebrate that too, though. Like, I'm a proponent of healthy choices.
Yeah, it was a positive experience, which is a crazy thing to say. But yeah, it did force it. I'm going to come back to the 4-day work week. I think pressure as a salesperson is a good thing. Too much pressure will crush things, but the right amount of pressure does tend to lift up. It does tend to cause that change in each of our lives, whether it was during COVID, or whether it's work, or whether it's trying to figure out. A little bit of pressure is a good thing sometimes, because it forces you to
healthy pressure.
Have those questions. Yes, healthy pressure, not
100%. And I think self-pressure is something that is interesting. We talk about Gen Z a lot. Some of the things they ask for, I'm like, oh, wow, okay. On the other side, I'm like, good for y'all. You're going to change the world with, like, this is what we will accept. This is what we won't accept. And I think having that self-pressure of, like, I wake up every day and want to finish my day knowing that I wouldn't look back and be like, ooh, you shouldn't have done that. Is it going to happen? No. There are days where I'm like, you are a jerk and terrible and you know better. Okay, well, I can wallow on that, or I could say, okay, well, tomorrow I'm going to try again. I'm going to do something different. And I think that self-pressure can be a really positive thing. I struggle with the holidays. That's just something in my life. And I was talking to my therapist about this. So I put some good pressure on myself. I chose gratitude in December. I reached out to someone every single day that just kind of came to my head. Like, if I woke up and was like, I should just tell Tom, like, I enjoy his podcast. I enjoy, like, what he's bringing to our space, or just people in my close life. And the pressure from that was 10x reward, because it was sometimes I was like, I hate today, I don't want to do it. And I was like, oh, I'm thinking of my friend Sylvia. Just sent her a little message, and she's like, hey, like, this was so well received. I was in a weird spot. This just brightened my day. That made me feel a million times better. And it was the good pressure I put on myself to choose my own narrative. I think we say things like pressure and struggle as, like, they're always negative connotations. Yes. Yeah, that can be true. There's good pressure. There's good struggle. And I'm not overly religious, but I always think of the quote, like, I think of the days where I prayed for the things I have now. It's easy to sit here and be like, shit is great. Life is awesome. Okay, well, where was I 10 years ago?
Yep.
Where was I 5 years ago? And the things that are bothering me now, I had one week where I was like, oh my gosh, I need the UPS man to stop, like, knocking on my office window and be like, thanks for the snacks. Okay, well, 5 years ago, I couldn't afford to put out snacks for the UPS man, and he wasn't coming all the time because of my Amazon addiction. Like, just reframing those, like, struggles and all of that is it's good pressure. It's good change. It's not always going to be good. But I think that's where 4-day work week is like, we have something good. And sometimes you have to grind extra hard to keep it. Sometimes you have to pick up extra stuff to get it. And there is uncomfortable. Nobody wants to go to their boss and be like, I'm stuck because I don't know how to do this.
Right. Yep.
But if you know the alternative is like, we're taking away the 4-day work week, you're a lot more pressured from yourself to have that conversation.
We're recording this. March Madness is starting like now. This will probably come out right around the finals at the end of it. Whether you like it or not, the reason it's so good, every game has a little bit more pressure and it makes the games better. Every shot has more pressure. It's a positive vision of pressure. You know, these players aren't like, oh God, I hate March Madness. I'm in the tournament and now it's so much pressure. No, it's, I'm going to do what I do and there's extra pressure behind it. I'm going to do it with a little bit more intensity, a little bit more vision, a little bit more excitement, a little more energy, a little more speed, whatever it is. And I think pressure gets a bad rap because it's used poorly.
And I think it's how we frame things. It's the same thing. Like if I'm like, it's not entirely my job as HR to make you happy. That's a very controversial negative statement. But no, it's my job as HR to provide you with resources for your mental and physical and fiscal well-being, whether it be the EAP, fringe benefits, things like that. It's also my job to provide a space where you're like, hey, I need to take a leave. I'm having a struggle, things like that. But it's not entirely reasonable or fair for me. Maybe you don't like me. So if I'm popping in your Slack every morning and I'm like, hey, Tom, hope you're having a great day and I want you to be happy. But like, that's the reality of it. Like, what's your expectation of me owning your happiness? Because it's different for everybody. And I think where like we have to frame the dialogue on negativity in a different way.
Yes.
And this is something my leader is teaching me. Like he constantly, we joke, Reid Hoffman stole the idea from him of letting the fires burn. I can't solve some problems. And it sucks. Like people in general, we're fixers and we're helpers and we have this servant heart. It's hard to sometimes be like, that sucks. I wish I had an answer. I don't. I support you. I'm here.
Yeah,
that's all I got.
I mean, I'm going to give a quick shout out to my VP, D Magleby. Like his job as a VP of sales is to put pressure and make sure things are happening. And he does it in a way that I always know there's an expectation of performance, but I always know there's support and I always know there's positivity. And, you know, it doesn't happen all the time.
And I think leaders are good. Go for D though. Like that's the thing. Like having a leader, you can say like, I get pressure, I have expectation, but I also know I have someone who's got my back.
Yep, 100%. So this conversation's been so good. I blew past jumping into the HR hot sauce. So we're going to do it late. And then I want to full circle back into a little bit of what didn't work with the 4-day work week. What tools didn't. So we'll get into that a little bit. But I want to do the HR hot sauce first. Is that all right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's jump into the HR hot sauce. All right, Ryan, it is time for the HR hot sauce. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What most engages you?
Face-to-face relationships. And I don't mean like in real life. I deal with a lot of vendors. We deal with go back and forth. I am all about kind of that handshake, eye contact. If I get a good feeling from you, that's really how I kind of do most of my practices. Most of our vendors that we currently work with are people that I can text and be like, hey, I have a question. It's very much a personal relationship. I grew up in a really small town, which I know we're going to cover. And I think it's more, they call it like that handshake negotiation. Obviously there's contracts, obviously there's TNCs that we go through, but really just having a personal connection for me and just really about respect. We are multi-global. I am huge passionate of diversity, second chance hiring, non-standard education. If people can't, I always kind of use the test of like, oh, your name's Ryan, but you're a girl. 2024, that shouldn't even be like a conversation. And I'm probably not going to like continue to go down any path with you professionally, personally, etc. Because it's just one of those things. I'm a big proponent. I want to do business with people I believe are genuinely good humans, because I know that like as an HR person, we try and hire good humans. Want to know their orgs are treating them good. I never want to have a vendor be like, oh, I hate it here. I'm like, that doesn't make me want to do business with you.
Great answer. What is your favorite piece of technology you use at work?
Slack. I live in Slack. It's my favorite. I use it for everything. We have a partnership with an amazing consultancy, 21B. They have just taught us all these tricks. I actually got Slack admin certified. but main source of communication. I also love the social element of it. I'm a big gift person, and you can create like the custom response emojis. Pretty much would say like most of my usage is Slack.
I love it. What's your favorite interview question to ask or be asked?
I think my favorite question I was ever asked was a former leader was like, what was the last non-work thing that brought you joy? And I've since like turned it around when I am interviewing for roles and when I'm interviewing for people. I think when you're an interviewee, it's really important to establish there is a life outside of work. We have a lot of talk about work-life balance. What does that look like? How do you define it? It's kind of this arbitrary thing. And if you're interviewing with a C-level or something, you're like, oh, I was at a summit on finance in our particular. Okay, that's not what I asked. Did you go to your kid's soccer game? Did you go ski? I know you and I bonded over like winter sports.
Yep.
I want to know you're a human outside of like the 9 to 5 parameters. And on the flip side, I really want to know what my humans are about. Yes, we're hiring you to do a job. Yes, we're hiring you to complete a task. That's just one piece of who you are. Like, are you a parent? Are you a pet owner? Are you a mountain climber? Are you a painter? We have a couple of people at Blackthorn that are like super talented musicians. One's in a punk band. One was on American Idol way back when.
Oh, cool.
We just have these cool little things. And I think it's a really good way, one, to kind of break the ice, get the nerves out of there. And also, if you are interviewing and they say, we work like balance, well, put your money where your mouth is. What did you do that was not work? Tell me that. And I want to know that you're not just like, I went to my kid's soccer game. My wife said I had a great time. Like
the whole person.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite workday lunch?
Honestly, I'm a mac and cheese person. We'll go out to a nice dinner, and that's always like my favorite side. So if there's like leftovers, I never make it during the day, and I've started to avoid like the easy mac. I go visit my sister. She has like stuff like that for the kids. There's definitely like, if it's around, I'm going to eat it. I also am infamous for forgetting to eat lunch. So I now have an alarm on my phone that's like, hey, have a snack. So I think like my favorite lunch would be the one that I remember to eat.
Hear to that. What's your most unique or useless skill?
I think my most unique skill is probably random facts. I can attribute this to the ADHD, but I listen to every kind of music. I love movies. I'm usually reading 3 or 4 books at the same time. So I find it really easy to relate. But then somebody will like go in depth and like, oh, so I'm a surface interest on that. Unique skill. I also am a knitter and a crocheter. So if you are having a baby and if you're in close proximity, my inner grandmother comes out and I'm like, here's a knitted blanket. My love language is gifting. So I do try and find like if there's a color theme, if things like that. It's unfortunately kind of ceased as we've grown bigger because more people, more babies, but it's definitely a fun little warm touch, useless in the workplace skill that always comes up.
We'll leave it as the unique skill, not useless. What makes your day at work? I know you're big at engagement, but what makes your day? Something simple.
Honestly, the checklist. I live and die by the checklist. I keep a notebook at me at all times. If I get half that checked off and I'm feeling good about it, that just really makes me feel good, because I think in the people space, every day is different. And you could come in and be like, this is my day, this is my ladder. And then you're on a cliff falling down on fire and your ladder doesn't get visited. So there's a lot of pride in being like, oh, I got 2 of those things done today, despite the fires.
Love it. Speaking of fires, mild, medium, hot, or nuclear?
Food-wise, I'm a mild girl. I grew up with a very kind of plain meat and potatoes palate. Personality-wise, I'm definitely going to say a little hot, nuclear, depending on the topic. I get a little spicy. But most of the time, I would say mild.
All right. You made it through the HR hot sauce. Hopefully, we didn't burn your tongue. Back to the show. All right, we're back.
Yes.
Great conversation.
That's so nerve-wracking, the hot sauce.
These are my favorite podcasts where like my whole itinerary like just goes out the window because the conversation just goes in this awesome direction.
My whole life.
Like I don't think we expected or prepped to talk about half what we talked about today, and I'm like super excited about where this conversation's gone. It's uplifted me. I'm excited for the rest of my day here. But I do want to get back to kind of our title thought here, which is that 4-day work week. It's a lot of work, a lot of vision. We talked about benefits and culture and uplifting and balance, but can you talk a little bit about what some of the bigger hurdles were? If someone else is listening to this going, I want to do that too. What are some of the corners to look around? What are some of the areas that were the toughest to overcome getting this done?
I think there's three that I really will call out. The number one is leader and manager buy-in. We did a beta, as mentioned, and like a month in, I was like, "So why are we having Friday meetings?" And it was like, "Well, not my team." I was like, "Okay, well, no, either we're all doing this or we're not,
Yeah.
because you can't." We tout this as a benefit now. We use it for our employee brands. We use it for a recruiting tool, and then you don't want to be the one team. It's like, "Oh, well, everybody but you." Like that, you look like a jerk. And it's not our culture. It's like we strive for equality, we strive for fair distribution. So if you don't have buy-in from everybody, my number one suggestion is, okay, do a meetingless Friday, no meetings Friday, or sounds off,
Hmm.
do not disturb day, to start there. The next thing was holidays. I will never forget the President's Day holiday in 2023. I was like, 3-day work week, hell yeah. I definitely worked all day Friday because I just had stuff that I needed to get in.
Yeah.
And it was like, I said there was like a buzz. Like everybody was like, I'm not working. I'm definitely not working, but you could feel the hum of everybody was. Okay, so how do we address that? Well, so we have the 4th of July holiday. I think last year was at the end of the week. If it's a Monday, okay, we work Friday. So it's a Tuesday through Friday. It's still a 4-day work week. It shifts. Okay, we've got that. Well, then we have all these other countries. And no disrespect to our great nation, we have the least amount of bank holidays. So when I was doing the calendar, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, there's 4 or 5 weeks in the calendar year that we ask the non-US folks to work 5 days a week. They work Monday through Friday because we have Labor Day Monday off. And we've tried to really frame up the reason we do that is if we went to every country, they would actually end up having more alternate weeks. And we didn't
Right.
want to do that. And then your people are choppy and stuff. So there's 5 weeks a year that we do this. And then there's some weeks we don't do it. Last year we had Christmas Eve was Thursday. So it was like Thursday, Friday. It's so slow then for everybody. Like
Yeah.
we're
Give them the
not
time.
we're not doing that. Having an on-call person for most departments, other than our support team and I believe our customer success team, everyone else alternates. I have the amazing head of talent, and him and I alternate. And our out of office on Friday will be like, "Hey, if this is a life or death emergency, text me here. I will get back to you." And then we've really kind of silently trained on what's an emergency. Like, "Hey, I can't get into the system to see my pay stub. Okay, can you get that Monday?" Or,
Yeah.
"Hey, I can't get into the system to see my benefits card and I fell and broke both my legs skiing and I'm getting heli lift." Yeah, I'm probably going to grab my laptop and get you that info.
Yeah.
Because that's like a now need. It's very rare people reach out. And then for all of our customers, like if they're our success team, our sales team, there's always somebody you can get a hold of. And basically we ask if you put in a couple solid hours of effort, talk to your manager, take a day off the next week. And it's the same thing with our sales team. If Friday is end of month, which is sometimes end of quarter, it's known
Yeah.
they're working and they're just off the following Monday. Because we're not going to sit here and be like, "Thanks for the extra free day of work,
Yeah.
guys. That was awesome."
Very nice.
We encourage. And then the last thing is figure out your PTO. We had a huge issue with no one taking PTO, which from a business line probably sounds great. There are psychological studies that show you need at least 5 calendar days to disconnect and reset from anything in your life.
Yes.
So as great as these 3-4 day weekends are with there's holidays, that's wonderful. You're still not truly disconnecting. And so
Right.
we tried a PTO minimum. There was some resistance on that. This year, Christmas, I believe, is on a Wednesday. So we're doing like a mostly shutdown week, and it's going to be run lean. Everybody who's working for support, a little bit of sales, will either do the week before or the week after. Just shut down, things like that. Because I was like chasing people. I'm like, please just take some PTO.
Yeah.
And I'm asking you to take like
Yeah.
a Friday to the following Sunday and then come back. And like, what a great problem to have. But if you take advantage, people are going to notice that. And I think us being vocal about it and saying like, "Hey, we don't want to assign you a random week of PTO. We're definitely not going to assign you the week between Christmas and New Year's because everyone else is already on PTO. So please work with us," and just coming up with problem solvings and having, like you said, you have a supportive leader. Same. My leader is one who has taught me so much. And most of the time it's like, he'll give me one of the breadcrumbs and then I have to figure out the rest of it. And by the time I come to him, we start so many conversations where I'm like, "Well, I know the answer, but," and he's like, "Okay, you know the answer." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't have to come to you for every piece of it,
Yeah.
but you like pushed me and encouraged me and it's made me a better leader." And I know there's support there if I like SOS him, but we've got a relationship where he's like, "You've got this. Just go build your mountain." And it's great. And I think those are the big 3 things that you have to watch if you're trying to introduce a program like this. Because the second you get the hostility or you're taking advantage of me, it's a wildfire you're not going to be able to contain.
Yep. No, I love that because it's so easy in these kind of conversations or have these ideas and just go 40 work week, yay, and not get into, well, what are the hurdles? This wasn't an easy process for you, was it? For Blackthorn.
But we definitely kind of YOLO'd it with the beta.
Yep.
I think we had a false sense of security because we had done summer Fridays every other Friday. So we're like, this is going to be fine.
Yeah.
It was not fine. But we came out, and I think there was just an agreement that buying in of like everybody's on the same page. All the leaders believe in this. Our leaders are infamous for saying, hey, just a random thought I had on this Friday, no action needed. They'll share an article, they'll share something. Or if somebody's like, I have this brilliant brain idea. Nobody has to respond. It's just us getting it pen to paper, pen to Slack. But yeah, so you have to have that whole sense of community for these things to work. And I think that's true with anything. If half your team is like, no, we don't want to invest in healthcare benefits.
Yeah.
Okay. If half your team doesn't want to invest in culture and learning and development, I don't think it's just down to the 4-day work week. Step one for anything to work is you have to have whole team buy-in.
Yep. That's why I like this conversation. It's not actually about a 4-day work week. It's about all the other things that you have to do that. It's not for everyone. But if you're the kind of organization that is daring or is willing to put in the work and it cares about the culture and focuses on the employees and focuses on your business and your growth and your retention, this sounds like a great idea to consider, a great program to consider.
Yeah, I think and I'm always available. I'm all over LinkedIn if anyone has questions. I'm happy to share my wisdoms and failings and things I could do different and go from there.
Excellent. So 2 final questions. Everyone always ends with, what are you listening to? But before we get there, I keep doing this, back-to-back podcast, double question, total faux pas.
Double question.
Blackthorn, quickly tell us, what do you guys do?
Blackthorn, we are an amazing app in the Salesforce App Exchange. We have 4 platforms: events, payments, compliance, and messaging. You can talk to any of our amazing business development or sales team that will tell you so much more about our beautiful product. I know the top shelf short version, but essentially we can do your event management. We can do the connector of your payments from your payment processor to your Salesforce environment. There's some add-on layers with that. And we work a lot with higher ed, nonprofit, just organizations that's super cool to be involved in.
Well, we'll put a link to that. Sounds like you're on LinkedIn. We'll put a link into Blackthorn and everything RyanMae in the notes. Where can people find you? Go ahead and just say it out. If you have Twitter, if you have LinkedIn.
I'm mostly just a LinkedIn girl.
That's it. All right.
It's a lot of pictures of my cats, a lot of memes. I've been on a Taylor Swift kick lately. So I definitely portray the real me, very humor, occasional typos, but that's kind of the real of it.
I love it. We'll have a link to your LinkedIn there. And final question of the day. What are you listening to right now?
Everything. I am we call it music ADD. Just this morning, there was a little Michael Buble. There was Vitamin String Orchestra with some classical. My girl Taylor Swift. Threw back to some Jimmy Buffett, and also obsessing on the new Co Wetzel, who's like this Texas red dirt country kind of guy.
Ooh, I don't know.
Just loving it. Yeah. He's got a new song. It's called Damn Near Normal. And he kind of talks about like anxiety and stuff. He's very real and nitty gritty. It's probably not super workplace appropriate, but it's a good jam. It's kind of mellow. But yeah, there's very few things I like. My big thing, I'm going to plug this because I'm hoping it gets to the Transform people. T-Pain for Transform next year. This is my new cause this is my new campaign I'm going to go on. We had Luna, we had Nelly. Let's get us some T-Pain, because the album I will recommend to everyone right now, if you did not know this, T-Pain is actually a phenomenal vocalist.
Oh, yeah.
And he did an album called Under the Covers, and it is all covers. He does Chris Stapleton. He did, I think, an Ozzy song, Led Zeppelin. Blown away. Like, add it to your collection. It is 10 out of 10, magnifique.
We'll link it off this podcast. Ryan, this has been a blast. This has been so much fun. Thank you for spending time engaging with Tom's Engaging HR. Been one of the more fun hours I've had in a while.
Ditto. Well, it was so great. I'm a huge fan. Glad the podcast is back in this iteration, and can't wait to chat with you again soon.
Stay in touch. Everybody listening, interact. We've got our last episodes on YouTube. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Twitter at Tom's Engaging HR. You can find me on LinkedIn. We're doing all this stuff. So please engage with us. Please check this episode out. Share it with your friends. And thank you so much for listening. Until next time, break signals. Take us away.